5 podcast, the Field of 68 Network, and we're here with the guy that started the Field of 68 Network, Jeff Goodman, one of my best friends, probably my best friend in the college basketball media, and a longtime supporter and confidant of mine. And Jeff, first of all, thanks for giving us this opportunity to do this year. It's been a blast. Hope it's been all you expected. But hey, last night, Ashley and I were both at the Baylor game. They beat Iowa State 77-72. A lot of people in panic mode. They think the sky is falling because Baylor didn't just roll over the Cyclones. I'm actually kind of encouraged by what I saw in the second half, them digging deep to gut out and win against the Iowa State team that was playing really well. What was from an outsider's perspective, watching from afar, what was your take on what we saw last night?
Well, I thought Scott Drew, first of all, was nuts for playing the game as quickly as they got out of their pause. I mean, they practiced twice. To put it in perspective, they practiced twice. Michigan, when they came out of their pause, they waited 9 days. They practiced for 9 days before playing their first game. So I thought Scott Drew was crazy to do this. Maybe if it hadn't been Iowa State, he wouldn't have done it. I don't know. But to me, listen, I thought they showed kind of that mental resolve that we knew they had, right? Mm-hmm. Like we know they have that toughness, that mental resolve. But they showed it last night. And again, whatever happened last night didn't change my thoughts, my impressions on where this team can go and what they can do at all.
I'm with you. It's crazy to me because I've covered the Big 12, as you know, for 2 decades. And I think back to all these teams, of all the last place teams I've seen in the Big 12 that have gone 1-16 or 2-14 this Iowa State team is pretty good, man. Yeah. They hit 7 of their first 8 threes last night. Tyler Harris was pumped up to play Baylor, a school he almost committed to. We know how good Bolton is. I'm just not that I don't know. I'm not that down on Baylor at all, like you said. I mean, I think anytime you're in a situation where you have to really dig deep and come back from a 17-point deficit, no matter who it's against, you got to feel good about pulling it off. What's your take, Jeff, just on this Big 12 race and the perception that'll be out there about Baylor if they win the league without completing the 18-game schedule? I mean, is that just a fan thing where people are going to be griping about? I mean, how's that going to be
better? They're so much better than it'd be one thing if it were close, but come on, this isn't a race. This isn't a race. Like you could have played 40 games in the Big 12 and Baylor would have absolutely torched everybody else. They're that much better if all things are equal. I know they're not. I know, again, some teams obviously with pauses and whatnot, but I just hate this crap out there of like, well, Baylor is trying to, protect their Big 12 title and they don't want to play certain teams. No. This is all done because of TV in the Big 12. That's why this is all done. And again, I'll go back to it. If I were Scott Drew, I wouldn't have played that game last night. I wouldn't have played it. I would have told the Big 12, hey, you know what? We're not ready. We need more than 2 practices. And obviously several players. I mean, there were a lot of people within the program that got hit with COVID here. This wasn't like one person this time. So I think, again, I give Scott a lot of credit and the staff for going out there and saying, you know what, we're going to put our undefeated record on the line here when we know we're not going to be close to healthy.
Absolutely. And it's probably good that they're not going to have to turn around and play West Virginia Thursday. That would be
very good.
Overwhelming, no matter who it's against, have to play 48 hours later, just coming off a pause, and then to do it against probably what I think, at least right now, is the second best team in the league. It probably works out best. Last comment on the Big 12 race, Ashley, before I let you pop in, is all these naysayers. I mean, do people not understand math? I mean, if they play 14 games and win them all, I mean, they could play the last 4 and lose them all and still win. So anyone that's gonna contest this or act like it's not legit, I mean, if they go 14-0 and West Virginia has 5 losses, I mean, Baylor could go 14-4 and still win. So
right. I mean, at this point,
I guess I'm just annoyed by Twitter. These Twitter trolls are annoying me a little bit this morning. So I guess that's what it is. Ashley, what do you got?
Yeah, and I think a key thing with this discussion too is that Baylor will end up playing 8 road games and only 6 home games. So it's not like they're losing a lot of games against teams that they would play on the road. I know it's a different year as far as road games are concerned, but I think that's a key point. Is at Oklahoma is the only place that they're going to avoid going to. in this 14-game stretch.
Yeah, I mean, these next few games are going to be great, though. I mean, they really are. I wish Baylor was at full strength.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, guys. I've talked to enough players and coaches throughout these pauses, and what they'll tell me is, for every day that they've been out, you need 1 day back to get back to 100%. So if you're out 3 weeks, like Baylor, 19 days, I guess.
Yep.
They were kind of out before they started practicing. To get fully back, again, it's different for every player, obviously, but overall, you're probably going to need 19 days or somewhere around there to see Baylor back to what they were before this pause.
So you would expect them, given this, the level of competition, that they're probably going to drop a game or two. I mean, that would be your expectation. Yeah.
I'd be shocked if they don't. If they don't, man, they're better than I thought. And they are. They're so good. And again, I think part of what makes them so good is what you saw last night, which is kind of like, all right, we'll come out, we'll play 2 days of practice. We're good to go. We'll play. And you know what? We'll dig ourselves a hole, but we'll come back and we'll find a way.
Right.
Right. You would think if they were going to drop one, it would be one of these next two. They have Kansas Saturday and Lawrence. I don't know the stat, but this is senior night for Kansas. And even though all the fans won't be there, I literally think it's been over 20 years since they lost on senior.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, and so Garrett's a senior. Is that right? So, I mean, there'll be some emotions there. I just still think, though, that this team is significantly better than Kansas. But despite Kansas's loss last night, I still think they're playing much better. I mean, even in Waco, they shot 52% against Baylor. Bill Self, is really going to have them coached up. That's going to be a tough place to play, or a tough game to win Saturday. And then obviously, like we mentioned, West Virginia. I just really like their team right now, what they have going. And
Yep, I agree. Listen,
Ashley, do we know if are they going to go straight from Lawrence to Morgantown?
Good question. Well, I mean, the game's a Tuesday game, so I doubt that they will do that. If it was a Monday game, I think they might consider it. But being Tuesday, I bet they go home and then fly out Monday.
So
yeah.
So guys, I did this story. On how Baylor was built. And it was awesome to do it because I did it at the right time. Obviously, they were shut down.
Right.
So David Kay, who I honestly think is as good as any sports information guy in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
Period. I will put him up against anybody, anywhere. Now, again, the other great part of David Kay is he's got maybe the best head coach to deal with in the country in terms of media. Jason, like, you don't get this everywhere. You don't get where you guys get for this podcast, like player upon player upon player, like whoever you want, you've gotten to some degree. Other pods can't get a current player, can't get anything.
I think a lot of that too is the fact that, I'm an alumni who's been around the program a long time. Ashley is as close with that staff as anyone, more so than me even. So I think that has to do with it. And too, I mean, it's just that the media attention in Waco, Texas, they're not getting hit up and scrutinized probably as much as those Kansas teams I used to cover. But it's been great, and it's nice. And I'm sorry to change the subject.
No, you're good.
It's nice to have a department, whether it's David Kay or the coaches, who don't look at the media as the enemy. I mean, it's when I first got into this, I felt like these features that I like to do and just coverage in general was so encouraged and welcome. And I don't know, about 10 years ago, I feel like sports information directors, a lot of them became more like, bodyguards and security for their coaches rather than liaisons for the media. And it's really kind of soured me a lot on the business at times. It's made our jobs that much harder. I mean, and in a way, though, I see their point because there's so many blogs and
they don't know who they can trust.
Random radio dudes with a microphone running around, and everyone has a voice now, and the media is so irresponsible. You're right, they don't know who to trust. They have to be more guarded. But I still would like for those media members who are kind of established and well known, I think maybe we should get the benefit of the doubt at times. But yeah, David Kay is great. I think Scott McConnell at Texas, those two guys right there in the Big 12, man, are top notch. So back to your story, Jeff, you got to talk to pretty much all these players and really learn a little bit about their story. What was your takeaway after all that?
Man, it was, I'll tell you what, like, they're good kids. Like, I've had a chance to spend some time around Jerry Butler, who I think is like salt of the earth. Like, Like, I love that kid, right? I love him. But a lot of the other kids, my daughter was able to interview Matt.
Yeah.
And he was awesome. So, like, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart, like, for him, because he did it, right? I mean, anytime, somebody does something for your kids, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, he's on a pedestal that nobody can touch.
Sure. So remember that forever.
A lot of the other guys I hadn't talked to, I talked to Mace before, and I really liked him. And we talked about his story, which was really cool, about the fact coming out of high school. I didn't know he didn't have another scholarship offer other than UNC Asheville. And it was funny when him telling me the story of, like, all right, I went in the portal and all these schools are calling me that, didn't want me out of high school. And I was pissed off. I was like, no, I don't want to. And then an assistant coach called him and he's like, hey, like, if you do that with everybody, nobody wanted you out of high school. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? If you eliminated everybody who didn't want you out of high school, the only place you can go is with Nick McDevitt to Middle Tennessee. That's it.
You'll be right back at Asheville. Yeah,
exactly. Or stay in Asheville. My favorite conversation was with Mark Vital.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God. Like, I had never talked to him. Honestly, we were going 45 minutes and I could have went another hour. Easy. Yeah. He is. Now, we bonded a little bit over, he grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And Jason, I don't know if you remember this kid, but Leonard Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Grew up in Lake Charles. And I do a lot with recruiting. And I remember
Wyoming, Leonard Washington,
or
USC, and then Wyoming. Yeah.
And I remember, how about this? This is a story. We're at Wide World of Sports in Orlando. And I remember Andy Kennedy comes running up to me and he's like, Andy Kennedy at that point was probably an assistant for Hugs, Cincy maybe. And he comes up to me. He's like, you got to see this kid. It's like, you got to watch him. He's like, so like I ran over and watched Leonard Washington and he was like PJ Tucker. That's who he was. And so he grew up in Lake Charles. So, you're always, Jason, you've done enough of these types of interviews with kids. I didn't know Vital at all. So you're trying to find something that you can connect with him early to get him to loosen up, right? Like, I don't know him. He doesn't know me. So we're talking about Leonard for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then the stories he proceeded to tell, like he told the story of Scott Drew coming in his Escalade, recruiting him. And he's like, he's coming into the hood. He's like, Lake Charles. He's like, most coaches aren't coming in here. And he's like, Coach Drew's coming in here. And he gets out of his car and he's waving to my family and he's waving to other people in the neighborhood. And I'm like, Coach, get the hell in the house. Like, get in the house. Like, it's not safe for you to be out there doing that stuff. And I don't know. He was so much fun to talk to. I mean, all of them, honestly. Like, Jonathan was just like salt of the earth.
Yeah.
You go down the list, Jordan Turner, you name it, Flo. Like, I just got done with it. And I was like, man, like, this is the highest character group, the best group that I have been around. And I'm sure you guys feel that too when you talk to these kids. It's like, and it starts at the top. It does. I mean, Tang, Jacobs, Alvin Brooks, obviously Scott Drew and his family, David Kay. I mean, there's just, I don't know, man. It's impressive.
I remember talking to you a few weeks ago, Jeff, on the phone, and it was right as you were kind of starting on that, and you were asking me a little bit about each guy. And I said, the guy you're going to love the most is Vital. And you said, really? Like, I go, dude, he is like the nicest, most quality guy. And you're like, wow. He goes, not that you thought he was a bad guy. You just didn't know much about him.
I didn't know him at all.
He came up big yesterday, but the effort he played with down the stretch was unbelievable.
But that's the thing, is all these guys have their own little personality quirks or whatever but they just all blend together so well. And I'm glad you got to see that, because I think that's why Ashley and I like covering this team so much and everyone in Waco, because it's not just that they're really good. It's just that they're such quality guys. Usually every team has that one or two like locker room cancer, that guy that's kind of like the malcontent who's not getting his minutes, or he had a bad game, and even though the team won, he's sulking. You don't see that with this group. And
Matt would be the guy. Like, to me, Matt would be the guy that could do that, because as Vital told me, he's like, he's got the highest NBA upside, not even close, of all of us. It's not even close. And I've talked to Matt my daughter asked the question to him, you know, basically why you didn't transfer out. And he just said, like, if I can't play here, how the hell can I play in the NBA or anywhere else? Like, I got to be able to play here. And he's really, I didn't know this. You guys, I'm sure know this, but I didn't realize like how immature he was when he first got to Baylor. Like some of the things they told me, like he'll lose his cell phone, like my daughter. Like he's got a lot of my daughter in him. Like, you know, loses his cell phone everywhere. Car is a disaster, an absolute train wreck, all that stuff. And he just, you know, like he just kind of laughs it off, and he's just kind of that happy-go-lucky type kid.
Well, I'm glad that Talia asked the tough questions, because Ashley and I were just talking to him about Long John Silver's and diet. So, I mean, luckily we got a hard-hitting journalist out here that asks the stuff about.
She watches me. Hey, she watches me, and she's like, you know, she figures out what can, you know, piss off.
No, I got a quick Matt Meyer story. So I went with the team to Italy in 2019, and I remember we were in the Sistine Chapel, and our tour guide was trying to keep the whole team together, and it was super crowded. It was August, and you know, just wall to wall people. And so the tour guide said, now, whatever you do, make sure you stay in this room until I tell you, and then we're going to go into this other room. Do not go down this other hallway, because then you can't get back in the room and you'll be gone. We can't find you. So sure enough, Matt's not paying attention, and he just takes off down the other hallway that he wasn't supposed to go to. And it was probably like a 30-minute to hour separation from the group. And we're all scrambling like, where's Matt? You know, he's easy to find. Fortunately, he's 6'9", but I mean, it was a mess.
They need to put one of those, you know how they have the like leashes for kids now?
Yeah.
They needed one of those for Matt.
For sure.
I always like when they bring Matt or Jared or Vital into post-game interviews. I think those are like three guys that all kind of approach the interview a little bit different. And Jared's like this eloquent speaker, but not cliche. You know, he says great stuff and it's impactful, but it's not cliche. And then Matt's kind of like short and sweet, but he says hilarious stuff. And then Vital is just like the loose cannon. I don't know if did you hear him last night? He comes on, and I don't ever put my camera on in those post games because I just feel like I look like crap. I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm usually just sitting near the game all like this. I don't know. So he goes, Jason, man, I can't see. He goes, what are you doing? You eating?
Yeah. Like, are you feeding your face? Yeah.
I was like, you know me too well, Mark. But
I got to start getting on those post games.
Yeah.
You know, like I you know, my big thing. So Jason, you'll appreciate this. So I don't know if I should say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Whatever. So I pitched to Scott trying to do something like all access for the NCAA tournament in Indy, right? And he's all for it. He's all for it. He wants media he wants the whole experience for these kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? And part of that, like you said, they don't look at the media as the enemy. They look at it as something that can provide more to the experience.
Right.
So he said, no problem. You know, he wouldn't count me towards the 34 or whatever number of people that they get for tier one. So I called somebody, I won't say who, you know who, from the NCAA, and said, hey, listen, if a team gives me all access for the tournament, could I do it?
Right.
And he basically shot it down. He was like, even if you got into their tier one, even if you were one of the 34, we probably still wouldn't okay it. And I get it, but my whole tick is like, listen, if I'm willing to pay for the testing every day, and I'm willing to be on the floor and not leave Baylor the entire time and not leave, and Scott Drew is okay with that, isn't that going to help the experience of telling the story of what's going on in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. They don't want to add any other people that could screw it up. I understand that. And listen, they probably don't.
They've all had COVID. No, they're not worried about it going forward.
They just don't want to deal with other reporters complaining. And the minute Jeff does it, either someone's going to complain or everyone's going to be applying for it. And when they get turned down, it's like, well, why did Jeff get to do it? But it's a great idea. The fact that Baylor and Scott were willing to entertain it again just says everything. Jeff, do me this. there's so many Baylor fans out there right now. I mean, this is a new thing to Baylor, not just for the team, but for their fans and their fan base to enter an NCAA tournament with legit aspirations of thinking they can win it all. I mean, maybe a few years ago, or during the Quincy Acey period, Jackson, Tweety, Carter days, they made the Elite Eight a few times. They ran into a buzzsaw. But I mean, this team. But at the same time, like me covering the Kansas for so long, I've seen awesome teams. The Morris twins lose to Shaka Smart, and Sharon Collins and Cole Aldrich lose to Northern Iowa. You know what I mean? It's people I think don't realize, man, like all it takes is one off night to ruin it all. And when that happens, in my opinion, it shouldn't ruin a season or make the season be viewed as a failure. What's your take on that whole dynamic as Baylor, prepares for this tournament?
Listen, I was talking to Mark Few about that the other day. Robbie Hummel and I did a podcast with him, and Few said that same thing. I think Hummel asked him kind of, what's your kryptonite? What do you worry about? And he said, honestly, the biggest thing I worry about is that people think it's like all or nothing for us, right? Like if we don't win it all, he said, we're not like Tom Brady. We're not like, the Lakers. We're still Gonzaga. And the same thing goes for Baylor. And in this year in which COVID could knock somebody off the rails pretty easily, like there's no guarantee whatsoever. Again, the timing of this was actually probably pretty good for Baylor in a sense.
Yeah, because now they've all had it for the most part.
Most of them have had it, and they won't have to test again. They're within that 90-day window.
Yeah.
Whoever had it, there'll probably still be a few players that would have to test, but most of their team now won't have to test, and that's a big worry. Mark Few said that to me. Right. I asked him, I said, what's your biggest concern about the NCAA tournament? He said, well, that there's a lot of evidence that supports that we shouldn't have to test outside of 90. It should be outside of 150.
Yeah.
He's worried that guys that are going to be asymptomatic are not going to be allowed to play in the NCAA tournament. That was his biggest concern. And that a lot of coaches share the same concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Jeff, I want to ask you about, I know you broke the story of the Hannah Perea tech situation a long time ago. In fact, funny story, I was at an event with the Baylor coaching staff when that story broke on social media. So I saw like the room go from happiness to,
right? That was Moorfield.
Moorfield, yeah. Moorfield was there. Yeah, Moorfield was there. The whole coaching staff was there. So I wondered how, just the balance between having to break stories like that and then the relationships. Was there some tense words with the coaching staff after that broke? Or, I mean, I'm just curious, your conversation, your relationship with Scott over the years after that broke.
It hasn't wavered. I mean, it hasn't wavered, and I'll give him credit because, Jason knows me well enough to know, like, no matter who it is, like, I'll keep going. Now, this isn't the same, but I'll go back to this. The coach I've been closest with in the industry over the last 15 years is probably Paul Hewitt. Okay. He was a coach at Georgia Tech. Then he was at George Mason.
Right.
Now he's a scout with the Clippers. But I put him on the hot seat his last 2 years at Georgia Tech. I do a hot seat every year, and I put him on it.
Yeah. A hot seat list is what Jeff's referring to. Coaches on hot seat list that you.
Yeah. So I put him on there, and I think I'm different, and I think Jason's different in how we were brought up in this business. Mm-hmm. We're journalists first, and obviously you've got relationships with people,
right?
But they got to understand that I have a job to do, and if you put me in a tough situation, I got to do my job,
right?
Like, don't put me in these situations, right? Like Mark Moorfield did something he shouldn't have done, and I think Scott understood that. He knew I had a job to do. I remember kind of talking him through it, and I think he knew it was coming, but maybe I didn't tell him. It's a long time ago, and I've broken some other stories since then, so I don't really remember that one like vividly.
Right.
I remember working on it, but it's just like even with Jason with this Greg Marshall story.
Yeah.
This past off season, I was knee deep in it. I told Jason, he knew. Yeah. He knew I was working on it, and you had a pretty good relationship with Greg Marshall.
Oh yeah, Greg. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like if I would have been employed somewhere where that was a story I needed to work on, I mean, I would have had no choice but to work on it too. My role is a little different now. I'm kind of in between some stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's difficult when those things happen. I mean, Bill Self's another guy that I know you're close with, but you get sent in years ago to write a story on Andrew Wiggins, and I was with you, man. I just wasn't feeling it with Wiggins and not as a player, but just there were some things that
there were red flags
that gave me pause. And I mean, and you were the one to write the story, and you voiced those concerns, even though you had a good relationship with Bill. And I mean, yeah, that's what's tough about being a reporter. Sometimes is a lot of these coaches think that they can butter you up and give you all this access and talk to you all the time, and then that you'll turn your head when bad stuff happens. And few are the people out there that can stay strong and not do that. And I think
early. Listen, I remember early on one of the first deals. Tom Crean took Marquette to Providence, and I was there, and he went up to me and started reciting all the stories I have written. I was at Fox, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Tom Crean knows who I am, and he had everybody in the team come up and shake my hand after the shoot around. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I realized later on, like, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a bunch of bullshit. All he's trying to do is, like you said, butter me up. And, now you don't fall for it as much as you're old. You get older.
I tell people all the time, I've kind of been out of the national media for a couple of years now. Maybe I'll get back in, maybe I won't. But one thing I noticed is coaches used to always call me like on my birthday or like, Christmas text or, just sometimes random text. Hey, just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Get none of those calls anymore.
Like 5 people. I say it. Once I get out, there'll be 5 people coaching wise that will give a shit about it.
I've got about 2 or 3. Obviously Scott and Chris Jans at New Mexico State, Bill Self. But for the most, Buzz Williams is another guy. But for the most part, I just don't hear from those people anymore. And one guy called me the other day, or left me a voicemail the other day, and just wanted to catch up with you, and haven't talked to you in a few years. And I called him back and I said, hey, by the way, I'm not in the meeting anymore, but call me back when you get a chance. Never heard from him again. So it happens. It happens, and it's frustrating.
Jeff, I got a question for you. I know I like to troll the Texas Tech fan base. I have a lot of respect for Chris Beard, great coach, but I like to troll him on Twitter a little bit.
I saw your tweet.
His nickname for Beard is John Wooden Jr.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I say that is because a couple of years ago, everybody was piling on saying he was a top 5 coach in the country.
Yep.
And I was just like, let's wait and see. He's had a great 2-year stretch, but let's wait and let the evidence present itself. I think he's a terrific coach. So I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but we're looking at resumes, and they're 4-8 in quad 1 and quad 2. If they were to lose to Texas and then lose to Baylor, they would be 4-10 in quad 1 and quad 2, entering the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah.
If they were to lose that second, they would be a 7th seed likely in the Big 12 tournament. If they were to lose that second round game and be 4-11 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, I mean, are they in danger of not making the tournament?
That's a weak resume. That's absolutely a weak resume. Here's the thing with, I've known Beard since he butted heads with Billy Clodd.
Right.
Even before that, I knew him.
Literally, almost. Right.
Literally, yes. Butted heads with Billy Clodd. No doubt.
Yeah.
So I have so much respect for Beard, as I do with Scott, because of the jobs they inherited and what they've done with them.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying, I do think Beard is a top 5 coach in the country. I really do. I believe that going forward. Again, the K's, the Izzos, the Selfs, those guys are obviously there. But what he did, taking that program within a basket of winning a national title, and prior to that, getting the Elite 8. I know they haven't been great the last 2 years, but they're still nationally relevant.
Yeah.
Both of these last 2 years, Texas Tech matters. And again, you guys know because you've seen it at Baylor. It's similar.
Sure.
It is similar. Now, Texas Tech is bigger, but ultimately in Lubbock and Waco, to do what both of those coaches have done, very different ways of doing it, is remarkable.
Yeah, if you're looking at coaches under 55, I think you got to look at Tony Bennett, Jay Wright, Mark Few, Scott Drew, Chris Beard.
Jay Wright's, I don't know if Jay Wright's under 55.
Or maybe under 60, maybe. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the next guard of coaches after Izzo and Krzyzewski.
Jay Wright's 59.
59. Wow. He's a young looking 59. Yeah, but yeah, to your point, I mean, I think Chris Beard is definitely one of the good young coaches in college basketball. But
and again, it's going to be interesting to see where like Beard goes. Texas Tech, they think he's never going to leave, which
right.
I just don't. I just see opportunity. Same thing with Scott, guys. Listen to me, and I've said this publicly. If John Calipari leaves for some reason or another, either they want him out, the fans chase him out, he's tired of it, whatever it is. If he leaves Lexington, the name I would look at, if I'm the AD at Kentucky, would be Scott Drew.
Right.
I think he could handle everything that comes along with that Kentucky program.
You don't think with a new arena, and of course I'm a Baylor homer, so I'm gonna.
No, I don't. You can say what you want now. You can say whatever you want.
Well, the faith and the faith aspect. I mean, the faith aspect is such a integral part of his life, and he's not going to have the freedom to do that at other schools. You don't think that matters?
I don't think you turn down, if you're Scott Drew, I do not think you turn down Kentucky if Kentucky comes calling with, whatever. I don't even know what the money would be. And again, I don't think this happens necessarily. I don't know where Calipari goes. That's my big thing is he's not leaving money on the table. He's not going to another college.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and what NBA, I've always said this, most NBA GMs wouldn't hire him because they don't think he's a good enough coach or they don't want to deal with the ego.
Yeah.
Now, the Knicks were the one that I thought last year, because of Leon Rose taking over, that's his boy with Worldwide West, taking over the Knicks. And I still think that could be the case in like 2 years. But right now, Tibbs is doing a good job with the Knicks. So, maybe 3-4 years, who knows? And the only way is if Cal knows he's going to have Devin Booker or Karl Anthony Towns or something like that. And honestly, those guys, you don't want to be coached by John Calipari when you're making more money than him.
Yeah.
I think Scott will consider the NBA if the NBA comes calling.
Yeah.
I think he's going to stay.
They'd eat him up
in college.
Honestly, they'd eat him up in the NBA. He can.
Yeah.
I'm watching Brad Stevens get eaten up in the NBA.
Right.
Yeah, that would not be a good fit. 2 or 3 years ago, Jeff, I would have wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm still not going to tell you you're wrong. I just think now I would actually lean on Scott staying for a while, just because the way they've got it rolling with who they have in place, with what they've got coming in, with that new arena being built. I don't think money is as big of a factor now. Plus, they're paying them really well. I'm sure they would up it. I don't know. Maybe I'm obviously a Baylor guy, but I just think things are different. It's just I'm not sure I like the fit for him at Kentucky, to be honest. The Notre Dame is a job that used to worry me with him because he's from that area. I know he likes that program a lot, and there's some uncertainty there.
Well, and I mentioned Arizona the other day. Like what? I mean, you don't think so?
I'd love to see him there if Sean leaves, but I don't. They can't pay. Arizona can't pay.
Yeah, his dad's there, his brother's there. I mean, that's the main thing. His dad moved to Arizona, so I just
think Kentucky can pay. They have unlimited resources.
Right.
You've got a fan base that is fanatical.
Right.
Maybe to the detriment of.
Yeah.
I guess I'm also looking at it. Who could handle being in Lexington? Who's a good enough coach? Who could handle all the drama? The going out in public and having to sign autographs all the time. Like nobody would be better than Scott at handling people, right? Nobody's better. So
it's like the Texas head football coaching job, though, in a way. I mean, just the fishbowl aspect of it, the media demands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he could stay at Baylor the rest of his life, if he wanted. But hey, let's not speculating on that. Let's just real quickly talk about this Big 12 overall, Jeff. I mean, is this league as good as people say it is? I mean, I know from a competitive standpoint, a parity standpoint, past the top team, it might be, but I look at it. I'm just not impressed with a lot of these. I mean, Texas Tech obviously down just from a personnel standpoint. I mean, Oklahoma's been okay, but that's not Oklahoma with Buddy Hield or Trey Young. And
college basketball's down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not what it was. You've got Baylor, Gonzaga. The Big Ten's got a lot of really good teams, but no like elite team, in my opinion. Michigan might be close. I mean, you're looking at it like I'm looking at it too, Jason.
Yeah.
Kansas runs the league. They're not that good. I've said this from day one. I think you actually came out with a tweet early.
They're just that. Their personnel isn't that good.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, Texas Tech's not the players just aren't that good this year, except in Waco, Texas. But so I don't know. I guess we don't have to talk about it.
Like honestly, when you look at it and you say, "Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia, if Kansas, if Texas Tech, if Oklahoma, if Texas, any one of those five could get to the Elite Eight, and it wouldn't surprise me." I just don't think any of them can win it all.
No. Texas is the team. I don't think they can win it all. But if they caught fire at the right time and everything just aligned, because talent-wise, they're really I still like that team a lot. I just obviously they've got some issues inside the locker room. Maybe they got to work out. Took a big step last night. Another thing that's been hot on my mind I wanted to ask you about, and we've been talking a ton about Scott, but I just don't see how he can't win National Coach of the Year, especially if they run the table. Now, running the table is going to be hard now. I mean, in the regular season, running the table. I mean, everyone's like, let's give it to Nate Oates or Lon Kruger. Are you kidding?
No, none of those guys.
No team.
Only two other guys in the equation for me.
Juwan Howard and Mark Few, right?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
I also think Chris Holtman's done a great job, but yes, I would say
lots of guys have done a great job. Right. Nate Oates and Lon Kruger have done a great job. But like one team in Big 12 history has gone undefeated. That was Kansas and Drew Gooden, Kirk Hines, and Collison. All right, that's 20 years ago. Right. And everyone's like, well, everyone expected Baylor to be good. Did you expect them to be undefeated? I didn't. I mean, and now
why penalize them? And why penalize them for having? I've done this in the past. I've penalized guys for being ranked 1 or 2 and living up to it. And
I mean, no offense. I thought he should have gotten it last year. I didn't understand the Anthony Grant thing, but that's fine. But it's just like you're talking about these incredible numbers they've put up, and B, just like you said, Jeff, their point guard was at Auburn averaging 2 points a game. Their shooting guard was not a top 100 recruit. Yeah. I mean, you got Maceo Teague from UNC Asheville. You got Shama Chachua coming in after a 2-point career at UNLV. I mean, you got Matt Meyer, who didn't go to UT, even though he's from Austin. And he's built this team, and over the last 2 years, he's gone 44-4. And people are wanting to go give the award to Nate Oates. I mean, I'm sorry, man. Like this dude should win this award. And like I know award stuff's overrated, but if he doesn't, I just think it's BS. Now granted, if they drop a few games and all of a sudden they're 20-2 and Juwan Howard's 20-2,
if you run it in the league,
I won't be as vocal. I mean, Juwan Howard thinks Mark Few, all these guys have done great, and so it's when everything else is even record wise. If they drop a few, maybe I wouldn't be as adamant. But God, right now, I just don't see how anyone else is in the conversation.
Real quick, just curious on your opinion on hot seat coaches in the Big 12. Do you think Iowa State sticks with Prom? Do you think TCU maybe getting impatient with Jamie Dixon? Especially
one more year for Dixon.
Yeah,
Prom is owed about $6 million if they fire him, and he's such a good human being.
Yep.
That I would think Iowa State gives him one more year. Bruce Weber's owed $2 million. So they could make a move with Bruce. I think it would be a mutual type thing. I think it would be bringing Bruce in and, hey, what do you think of where the program is? Do you want to do it again? Do you think you can get it back? Obviously, they're coming off a big win last night. So I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, again, Prom, I think, gets one more. Bruce, I think, is probably more. $2 million is not a lot of money at Kansas State. They could easily make the move. So I could see something happening there. And then obviously the big thing is to watch Kansas and what happens with Bill.
Yeah.
That's the big thing in the offseason.
Sure. Give me 3 names if that were to happen that would be in the mix at Kansas.
Well, All right. So here's the thing. Here's what I'll tell you is if it happens, that probably means he got a 2-year postseason ban, right?
Yeah.
To fire him, I think it's going to take like a 2-year postseason ban to say, all right, you know what?
Yeah.
We got to make a move.
Right.
So Chris Beard isn't taking that job with a 2-year postseason ban. He's not. So you're not going to get an elite guy. So, are you talking like a Tad Boyle? Like that level guy?
Well, dude, if you're not going to get an elite guy, then just hang on to him. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, just
2 years with recruiting restrictions set you back 4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can't go out and recruit, if you get a postseason ban and they also say, hey, you can't recruit for a year, like that's going to crush you. You're already seeing how much it's killed them with their talent right now in the program and how much it's fallen.
Would they do that just with Self or with the new guy too? Like Self couldn't recruit for 2 years, or the Kansas?
I would think it would be Self. Yeah, I would think it would be if they do it. I would think they would do it with Bill. So I'm trying to think of other names.
Turgeon?
Yeah.
You think Turgeon?
Yeah, Turge would probably take it in a heartbeat, obviously. You know who'd go? Larry Brown, what is he, 90 yet? He'd go after.
He's coaching my son's 6th grade C team over at the Frisco Rec Center right now. He'll coach anywhere. I mean,
anywhere. It does not matter. That dude will coach anywhere. So I think Tad Boyle, Mark Turgeon, like
Jared Haas,
other guys.
Jared Haas.
Hasn't done quite enough.
Yeah.
I like him. Listen, the problem is, and it's the same thing with me and my alma mater, Arizona. If they get hit with 2 years, what do they do? Who are you going to get?
Yeah.
Who are the from college basketball?
I got to run. I know who's calling.
All right.
Oh man.
Jason closes.
All right, Jeff. We'll do this again sometime. Thanks for letting us do this year. It's been awesome.
Love what you guys have done.
Yeah.
Love what you've done.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
it's been awesome to watch. So glad, the model's really been more former players hosting them. But so glad we brought you guys on board. You guys have killed it. And again, listen, hopefully you got another 6 good weeks here to run this thing out for the active season, and then we get in the off season.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right, for Ashley Hodge and Jeff Goodman, I'm Jason King to the Sic'Em 365 podcast. Subscribe on iTunes and all that other good stuff. Thank you, Jeff.